In today's episode of the Do The Work podcast, I welcome a guest, Josh Mountain. He's the owner of Orange Soccer Academy. We're a local football coaching company that helps kids of all ages to improve their game. Whether that be helping a complete beginner get to the point where they can join the local team, or coaching already competent footballers to be even better. Between the coaching staff at Orange, they hold over 100 years of coaching experience. And I talked to Josh today, who is also one of our best friends, about how he's managed working full-time, managing his business on top of that, and keeping himself in incredible shape all year round. Enjoy the episode. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, mate. Happy to be here.
Excellent. So, obviously got you here today to talk a little bit about what you're doing at the minute, what you've done in the past, but primarily to get an understanding of how you managed to piece together training, your business, and then full-time job and stuff like that as well. So for the people listening in, if you could give us a bit of a run through about where you've got or how you've got to where you are now. Obviously you've got Orange Soccer, so you've got a football coaching business. So a little bit from where you started to where you are now would be great to get us started.
All right. If we're going sort of like coaching career-wise, first started coaching around 16, 17. Started volunteering as most people sort of do, and then sort of genuinely realised it was a career path you could actually get paid to do, which is like, sounds stupid now, but as a 16, 17-year-old, doing something that you've sort of found an initial love for and then realising that you can get paid to do it, you sort of feel like I've sort of cheated the system a bit and like I'm really lucky here. So then literally between the ages of 16 and 33 now, coaching has taken me to America and back, where I've probably spent 6 or 7 years collectively living out there full time, traveling forward and backwards, working for a whole host of clubs. So worked in the women's game at Preston North End, worked in boys academy football at Fleetwood. When I initially came back from America, the final time, in inverted commas, because you never know if it is the final time, I started working for Orange Soccer as I think my official job title was business development executive or something, which didn't sort of sit too comfortably with me. So at the first chance I got, I sort of said I'd like to be more like coaching related, and then worked for Orange Soccer for, I want to say, 2 to 3 years. That's then sort of led me towards when I joined Fleetwood. And in and around that time, within the next couple of years, that's when we had COVID. So shortly, so in between COVID and then Fleetwood, the previous owner of Orange Soccer asked me, would you like to buy Orange Soccer? And after some consideration, I said yes. Then started the process of sort of me taking over Orange Soccer as a company, like sort of changing things slightly, but just continuing with what we were doing because there was a really good structure in place. Made my final sort of payment, if you will, to the company is now yours. And then literally, I think that was the March, and then in the April, that was COVID. So obviously shut down completely. And then just effectively tried to stay in touch with the kids best we could over that time period. Doing a lot of online stuff, and just trying to keep the players that we had engaged, before then returning, what would have been 2 years after maybe, and then sort of taking us to where we are today, change of location, and now in our current form, training 4 nights a week, soccer schools during half terms, which we didn't have before. So that's a little sort of journey in terms of like the Orange Soccer side of things. Amongst all that, like personally, I qualified myself, a B license in goalkeeping, a B license in outfield, various American qualifications, a degree in coaching along the way, and also returned to Newman College after being a student there, where we spent some time together. And I've been working with our men's football academy initially, before then leading our women's football academy for, this will be our 4th year of having an independent women's football academy, which is going from strength to strength. So that's sort of a little snapshot, I guess, into where I've been going. Yeah.
So there's a huge body of work there leading to like where you are today, and obviously Orange Soccer now, to just spend a little bit of time going through that, is obviously, in a progressive place. You've grown it, and you're at a point now where you're running, as you said, summer schools and 4 nights and stuff like that. So for the people listening in, if they're maybe parents or if their kids might be into football or what have you, what is it that Orange Soccer do? Is it a football team? You mentioned it's coaching. So what could someone or what could a child get from it from joining Orange Soccer?
Yeah, Orange Soccer is ultimately an additional training platform is what we would describe it to people. So, like you say, the majority of parents will have some sort of concept of how grassroots football works in the UK. Typically, a game on a weekend, and then one training session a week, maybe 2 training sessions a week. We just felt that there was a demand out there for parents and players who are looking for additional coaching in a structured environment with professional staff during the week that they can then use to enhance the learning that they're getting with their grassroots teams. So we sort of sit in that space where some children go and do karate or swimming or judo or whatever it might be. Our children come to us as well as doing all of those things, but then to get additional football coaching. Myself, our coaching staff have all worked across academy football. I've worked internationally, just to name a few: Luke, Alan, Dan, Callum, Joe. Our coaching team is, I think at last count we had over 100 years coaching experience collectively between us. So what we try to do is sort of give parents and players that additional football during the week that they can use to accelerate their son or daughter's development. And that would probably be, again, like in a nutshell, sort of what we try and do, really.
Yeah, amazing. And as you say, that's kind of gone from strength to strength, but that's took a lot of effort that you've had to put in to get it there, alongside obviously the coaches and what have you as well. But fundamentally today, what I want to get to is obviously discuss and talk about what you've done with Orange Soccer, but again, how you've managed to balance that alongside your own life as well. Obviously, you've got Becky, you're married now, and whilst doing all of this, which I don't think you mentioned, you've got a full-time job essentially that you have to do alongside all of that, and then keeping in shape as well. So I suppose let's dive into that a little bit. How do you manage in a time sense to keep on top of all them things? So, you keep yourself in good shape all year round. You come up against quite a bit of stick from the lads and stuff like that, which I suppose sometimes it's a little bit of stick, sometimes might be a little bit of envy or jealousy. But how do you manage to stay in shape to not just run your business, but progress your business, manage the full-time job, and then things at home as well?
I think the really boring answer, just being really, really organised. All the parts of my life that are currently that you've listed: business, marriage, full-time job, relationships, friendships. That all those things are going on. So it's just making sure that you structure your week in a way that allows you to sort of give the right amount of time to everything. And obviously sometimes there's some give and take where, there will be weeks where I feel like I barely see Becky, but she's super supportive, and understands that, it's really important to me. And obviously it ebbs and flows. Summer is a little bit quieter. We see more of each other. But the biggest advice I could give anyone who's sort of juggling those sort of commitments and had like a similar lifestyle is the organisation, and sort of trying to piece together like your week ahead of time. I'll spend usually most Sundays just sort of plotting out the week, trying to think about how I can save time where I can, whether that would be, things like food preparation, just looking at what gym classes I want to go to ahead of time, and then just but then also just being willing to adapt as well, and just sort of going, well, I might need to do something a bit different one day. Try not to be so structured that it can become stressful if you don't follow your exact regime. But I would definitely say getting organised ahead of the coming week would be massive for me.
Yeah, I agree. And relating back to what a lot of my clients say when they're checking in and stuff like that, and on a weekly basis, they'll often refer to just preparation and organisation, and it almost can sound a bit like repetitive sometimes when they're saying it, but they're the ones that are getting the results because, again, they're being consistent, they're being organised, they're preparing the food, they're planning when they're going to do the training and all of that stuff. So if we go back to what, a typical day looks like for you, so when do you train? You obviously got your day job, you've got your business, you've got home life. So talk me through from start to finish what a typical day might look like.
A typical day, this is probably, you said about getting stick from people, this is probably the biggest thing I get stick for, but a typical day starts at, I think my first alarm is 5:15, second alarm is 5:20. And then by that stage, it's like roll out of bed and hit the floor and just get moving. I function best when I go to work out in the morning. That's just me. I don't actually know what working out in the afternoon would be like because I've never really sort of had that opportunity because, like I said, I'm usually going from one place to another. Trying to fit in a gym class in there is tricky. So I typically try and go to the gym in the morning because then it's done. And also without being too cliche, it's just a really good way to set you up for the day, as you'll well know. So usually wrapped up by 7:15, and then depending what day of the week it is, it's either straight to training, which would be either boys or girls football at Newman. It would be some kind of visit to Newman for teaching content. And then that would then take you through either a full day, half a day. Before then, the only day off I have at the minute in the evening is a Tuesday. So Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday would be something that looks like that. And then in the evening would then go and coach, and all of our sessions start at 6 and then like finish between 8 and 9. At the minute, weekends are sacred. Like I don't do any coaching. So, I said in terms of how do we balance it all, I used to also do coaching on a Saturday as well. And I would also then play on a Sunday, but have sort of stepped away from playing at the moment just to increase family time. And then on the same thing on a Saturday as well, just taking a step back to sort of give myself more time to basically see Becky and Willow more.
Yeah, so I mean, it'd be easy for you in the midst of all of that to, not, as you said, roll out of bed at your alarm at 5:15 in the morning and 5:20, and then stay in bed to get the extra hour because you're tired, because you've been doing that, because you've been working, then coaching, and then sort of here we go again. So what is it that stops you from doing that? Like, what is it that gets you out in the bed in the morning? Because I know from speaking to a lot of people that think about making a change or consider it, they can't quite maybe get that first day where they get themselves out of bed, they're hitting snooze and they're going tomorrow or next Monday or next month. So I suppose you're doing it now every day. So how do you make that happen?
I think I've said this to you before, even with exercise, I think even when it's bad, it's good. So I think the biggest mistake I've potentially made in the past, or I've sort of seen, I'm not a qualified personal trainer like you, but I've sort of seen other people make just from relationships and things, is feeling like every single session has to be like a personal best. Every single session needs to be the fastest you've run, the heaviest you've lifted. And I think especially during like heavy load weeks for us. So last week we've just had a soccer school running, where that's a full day. So we go from, set up from 8 o'clock and usually last players getting collected at 4 p.m. So we're talking an 8-hour day there in terms of like on the pitch. And then all our weekly sessions are still running in the evenings as well. I've experimented in the past with sort of going, it's probably best that I don't go to the gym this week. But then I found it was really difficult I felt a bit flat. Like I think I'd sort of need that little kick in the morning. But I think whether that means you go and lift loads of heavy weight or do something really intense or just go out for a walk or whatever, I found that this week what I did was I just tried to do the best I could as many days as possible. And that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I was probably going at pretty much full tilt as what I would do normally. But then once the volume of coaching hours was kicking in Thursday, Friday, I was then scaling a lot of the stuff. So if it was to lift a certain weight or to run a certain distance, I was just saying, oh, well, I'm just going to do a little bit less or run a little bit, less far. Or because I'm still going. So maybe I'm not quite progressing at all that week, but probably better to have some kind of active recovery or taper week. So I think I manage it by not sort of feeling the need to really smash it every single session. Like I'll always go in with the mindset of there's no reason I can't, but then just listening to your body, I think, and where you're at as well, and I think just turning up. Like,
Yeah. So I suppose the point there is to make sure that regardless of how you feel, you still turn up, but there's no pressure to, like you say, deliver a PB or do a 100% flat out session every time. It's more important to you to maintain that habit, and I suppose not give yourself that out and that, okay, I've skipped it once, so I can skip it again and again. And that's what you tend to see happen with people that are trying to go to the gym. The one time they miss that Monday, maybe they've almost like okayed it in the mind. So for you, it's more important to maintain that routine and that habit. And are there any other sort of like bits of motivation there? Because I suppose like to get into what you do as training at the minute, you go to CrossFit. So other than you going for you, do you feel any other pressure? There's people around you, for example, at the gym. Do you feel pressured to show up for them as well?
I think the one thing about CrossFit, which is quite unique to the sport itself, is it is a really probably one of the best communities I've ever been part of, and I genuinely mean that. But also fiercely competitive as well, where I always say to people, like, no one cares what anyone else is doing, but equally you want to try and, we'll always say, because the great thing is you're in a class of 12 to 14 people and everyone's got different strengths. So there'll be some workouts where someone's going to run faster to you, and we'll always say, like, oh, I was hanging on to you, like trying to stay in your slipstream, or I was just trying to match your weight today. And because of that, yeah, maybe there is a little bit of that accountability of not like, oh, it would never ever be, and this is the great thing about CrossFit, it would never be, oh, they're not lifting very much, they're slower than such and such a body. But personally, I will, it doesn't define me, but I would take a look around the room and go, I feel like I'm in a similar place to that person. And they're a little bit faster than me at the minute, kind of try and catch them. So yeah, definitely. But I think the main motivation is just wanting it for myself. I think me and Becky going on holiday next week, and it wasn't planned really. We just decided to go. And I always jokingly say to Becky, like, you've got to be ready for a holiday at any point. That's my sort of, Joe said, the motivation to stay in shape. I want to, if someone randomly says, oh, do you want to come and do this? And it's a holiday or it's something, or someone drops out of a competition, for example, say, it's like, I want to be in good enough shape that I can just say yes and not really have to think too much about it. So there's definitely some, a good amount of internal motivation in there as well.
So what does that look like in terms of being ready for a holiday to you? Why, what does that look like and why is it important?
It's a really good question, to be fair. I genuinely think I spent a lot of my childhood as the chubby kid, and got a fair bit of stick for that. So I think internally there must be some unresolved trauma in there about how I want to try and, be really physically fit now. And I always make the joke of like, I'm just training for the dad's race on sports day whenever that day arrives. I just think I want to be, and also setting a good example for the players that we work with. I think it's so important as a coach, whether that's to the younger ones that we work with or like the girls and the lads at the college who are as old as 18, 19. I want to be able to, if a player drops out in training because of an injury, I want to be able to throw a bib on and go and join in without disgracing myself. And I feel like I manage, they might say otherwise, but I feel like I managed to do that at the moment. So I think in terms of the fitness side of things, that's definitely got a lot to say. In terms of the aesthetic stuff, it's just nice. I guess it's just nice to look good, and you shouldn't be ashamed of saying that. If you go on holiday, it's nice to have the confidence to be able to take your shirt off, and you shouldn't care what anyone thinks anyway if you're confident within yourself. But I definitely want to be able to go on holiday and go, I want to be able to sit by the pool and not feel like I've maybe got to keep my t-shirt on or whatever, because, that's part of the reason why you turn up to the gym every day, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's like frowned upon in this day and age in a lot of ways, isn't it, as well, with kind of like the body positivity movements and stuff like that, and like you said, I think if you're confident in yourself, whatever you look like, that's fine. but equally, if you're sort of papering over the cracks, so to speak, and you're not, then you should feel comfortable in a holiday environment. Many women that come to me struggle, with not being able to be in a photo. So they go to all these family occasions. It might be their kid's birthday or whatever, and they avoid the photos. Maybe they're the one taking the photo, or it's just a headshot because they don't want to be in it. And I find that really, really sad. And that for me would be the ultimate motivation to keep me going if I was there with a family. So I like being able to help people feel comfortable in that environment. And I think often when you're doing it not just for you, but someone else as well, and someone else that's important to you. So like, I don't know if you have Becky in your mind, for example, when you're working towards this. But I feel like it's sometimes easier if you do it for someone else rather than just you.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. There's only one way to put it to the test, but Becky's never been one for like, I've been through like a weird sort of journey with fitness, really. I've been at the point where you'll know, from having known me for so long, but I've been through the whole like weighing food, counting calories, really strict, logging everything, to a point now where I've just got a general idea of what it is, and I sort of don't really fluctuate in weight. If I suddenly, I don't know, say I got an injury and struggled to get fit again or whatever it might be, I don't think, I'd like to hope Becky wouldn't be packing her bags and leaving. But yeah, definitely, like if you've got a partner, you want to look good for them, and potentially like set a good example for your partner, your family, children, whoever it might be. So as well as yourself, yeah, I think it's really healthy to want to do it for other people too.
It's a balance to strike. I think you're right. I don't think Becky will be packing her bags and shooting off, and the same with Alicia. But I think feeling or taking upon that responsibility of yourself to set the right example is probably the best way to phrase it, to be fair. So you now do CrossFit, and you've not always done that. You mentioned you've tried a lot of different things before. So what is it about CrossFit? And I think you've touched upon it a few times, but we might just go through it again. What is it about CrossFit that's kind of made it stick? Because I know you've done bodybuilding, you've done different kinds of things. So what was it about what you're doing now that has meant it stayed in your life?
I think I've probably been doing CrossFit now. Again, like this was you can use COVID as like a timeline. I started doing CrossFit literally just before the peak of the pandemic, and then couldn't go to the gym and things like that. Just before that, a friend of mine, Sean, who now lives in Seattle, he introduced me to CrossFit. He'd been doing it for quite a while, and I'd tagged in with him, and we'd gone to, JD or Pure Gym and done CrossFit sessions in the studio, and everyone's looking at you like, that's a bit weird. Like, 'cause by default, some of the stuff is a bit intense. And then just kind of found a real love for it. And there was a period when I was doing CrossFit and playing football at the same time. But the football was starting to have an effect on my ability to. You always talk about the flow of the week, like as potentially scaling. It was the other way around. So I'd play football on a Sunday, and then it'd be like maybe the Wednesday morning before I felt I can go hard again. And Monday, Tuesday was almost a write-off. So with that in mind, and having not played football competitively for 12 months, CrossFit has sort of given me that competitive environment that typically you'd miss if you'd walked away from sport entirely, because CrossFit as a discipline is classed as a sport. So, always looking for that competitive element in your life. And I think doing CrossFit has allowed me to sort of take a little step back from football. Because I was beat up from playing. I'd play and I'd just be a write-off, genuinely in pain. And that was genuinely like affecting how I'd coach, because I couldn't demonstrate. I could barely move. Like, I'm only 33, but it was just the way my body was reacting to the quality of the pitches and stuff, because it wasn't a particularly good standard. But CrossFit has given me, that environment where you can be competitive against yourself, against others. Our gym's great in terms of like how it's structured and the workouts and how it's logged, so you can go back and check your progress. So ultimately, you're competing with yourself. But again, like I said, you're working a class, so you can sort of keep your eye on someone who's maybe slightly ahead of you or slightly behind you, so you can sort of keep a pace. And then we'll do informal team competitions and things like that at the weekend. So it just sort of gives you that. If you were missing the competitiveness of playing a team sport, it sort of gives you that fix, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, for some people they aren't competitive, but if you are and you like training, I think CrossFit is a great environment for that. And as you've said quite a few times, the community is really sort of strong as well. What I want to do now is move towards like the impact that you think that that's had on the rest of your life. So I suppose if you think for a second, like, would you have been as successful in your business, in home life and what have you, if you didn't have such a commitment to exercise? Like, what has that done for you in terms of the rest of your life, do you think?
I think being committed to your exercise, all the stuff that I've said, like setting you up for the day, giving you that little endorphin kick in the morning and just sort of getting you going, I think it's just a really good indicator and a good life lesson that if you keep turning up, things get better. So whether that is the gym, and you might not be very good at whatever it is when you start, but you just keep showing up and you're not really bothered about what everyone else is doing. You just focus on, number one, I'll just turn up. Number two, I'll try and be a little bit better every time. I think that's a life lesson that potentially everyone can get on board with, because it's the same as anything, whether it's a relationship that you're starting from the beginning with someone, and it's just, I'm just going to take it steady and just see where this goes and not sort of go all in on it, whether that's your job, whether it's anything. And just teaches you to be disciplined, really. So I think that sort of, we've talked about the 80% of success is showing up, and whether that is the gym or your life, like I think that's probably one of the most powerful quotes I've seen that sort of has justified like how I do my lifestyle in terms of the gym, but also how I like try and run the business and the other parts of my life as well.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, other sort of quote people use is like, how you do anything is how you do everything. So showing up on time, doing the work, so to speak, in the gym environment allows you to then go into that work environment. And you go into the gym in the morning, I know that, and anyone knows that's done exercise before, that ultimately you feel a hell of a lot better after that, no matter how or what mindset you went into that day with. So I think on the small scale, it helps you day to day. But I get a lot of clients that come to me, like especially a lot of females who maybe they struggle with the mental health, whether that be depression, anxiety, low body confidence, low energy, all of that stuff. And then as soon as they begin to exercise, they immediately start to feel better. And then if they then continue with that, the, I suppose, symptoms of the lifestyle that they had before disappear, and they're healthier, happier, have more energy as a result of exercising. And ultimately it's free to do, which is what I often say to people. Like, if it was a drug, it would be prescribed in a doctor's surgery every single day. And I think not enough of that is talked about, to be fair. So, okay, we've covered a lot there in that sense. Let's just segue slightly onto the diet front. So you said, because this is the common topic that people struggle with, right? They kind of get that they need to exercise and stuff, but they really don't want to change their diet, or they find it really difficult to do so. There's a lot of resistance there. You've gone through patches where you've calorie counted, weighed it out, done all that stuff. Now you don't do that, but I know you've got a pretty consistent approach to it. So many people would look to that, and some of our friends would look to that and say, Josh, that's boring as fuck. Like, do you know what I mean? So how do you manage to maintain that but still get the enjoyment out of life that you have as well?
I think because of one thing that I think I'm lucky in that regard is because there's the Monday to Friday is quite regimented in terms of where I've got to go and what I've got to do. The food that I'm taking in has to be very similar in terms of how it's structured. And Monday to Friday, I'm pretty much nailed on the same 5 breakfasts, the same 5 teas. You'll know, but just for the benefit of anyone listening and watching, I've sort of fallen into like an intermittent fasting sort of a deal, which happened by accident really on a previous job where it was hard to jump out of work to basically have breakfast. So then that was getting later and later and later, and then breakfast became like dinner time, and I've sort of kept with that since. And it works for me. So typically I eat breakfast, and it's the same breakfast every day, and then I usually have the same tea every day around the same time, maybe a protein shake. But because of, and also I don't have time really to to snack, to be honest. So I think I benefit from, because I'm so busy Monday to Friday, I don't have the time to sort of go, raiding the cupboards. And even if I do, I go and like I almost shout at myself, going, why didn't you buy anything fun from the shops? Because I go in and there's nothing exciting in there anyway. But then, being really honest, like Saturday, Sunday, maybe a similar breakfast, but then I don't really think about it. If I want to have a pizza, if I want to get a takeaway, go out for tea, I don't go for the low calorie option or whatever. So if I was going for like a really strong aesthetic calorie counting, I probably wouldn't be making the progress that you'd need. But because it's more just about food fits into my lifestyle, my schedule Monday to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, pretty much do whatever I sort of want in that regard. I feel like that sort of balances it out. And I think that's the big thing is, I think everyone feels like you've got to go straight away from Monday to Sunday, rice and chicken, whatever it might be, a protein shake with water, and people don't enjoy that, and that's why they lose that consistency.
Yeah, I guess going back to what you were saying about like Monday to Friday and being, consistent and stuff, you've got an environment where you're so busy that you don't have time to, make loads of fancy meals and stuff like that. So the decision is almost made for you because of how busy you are. But I think a lot of people are that busy, but instead of doing it your way, they opt for like convenience. So it might be like meal deals or ready meals or things like that, that they see fit. So it just takes that little bit of extra time, I suppose, and preparation, and ultimately the willingness to do that, right? To be fairly consistent with the meals and stuff. Like I'm someone who can probably be quite boring, I suppose, as someone would say, and consistent with my meals. It's the evening meal typically that changes around, but let's be honest, like every 2 weeks the same meals are probably rotating. But I think most people see that as a little bit boring, so it's trying to find that blend between the two. And I find that right in keeping my sort of like 2 or 3 daytime meals the same, and then the evening meal rotates a little bit around that, and that's sort of something that works for me. Still on the side of diet, let's talk boozing. So you're in a situation in life now where you just don't drink that much, right?
No.
And I know obviously I've played football, and I've seen this happen where you've come into an environment where people go to the pub after football and everyone's drinking pints, and then Josh turns up and orders a latte, and you're getting absolutely fucking ridiculed for it by people that are drinking like 4, 5, 6 pints on a Sunday after football. So first of all, why did you do that, and how did that feel initially?
I can't pinpoint a time when I sort of actively made the decision of I'm going to sort of stop drinking. Like just for the record, like Southern doesn't think I'm a complete robot. Like I still do drink. We've had plenty of weddings, birthdays, and things, but I would definitely put myself down more as like a social event drinker now. I've never been one for like having a beer at home. Maybe a glass of wine with tea, possibly. But in terms of like you do get that initial pushback because I think everyone sort of, in fact, I'm trying to think if I can pinpoint it. I think when I was calorie counting, when I lived in Salt Lake, and because I was really going for like the measuring your food, like logging it, MyFitnessPal, all that sort of stuff, and it just wasn't worth the calories for the beer on a Saturday night to then go, right, well, you now can't have a yogurt or something just like that's so moderately enjoyable, but when your calories are cut that much for your cutting phase, that it's a 100-calorie yogurt over half a beer at that point. So I think it started then, and then I sort of became like the designated driver. So I'd drive all our friends downtown, and I'd just have a Diet Coke or whatever, and then drive back afterwards. But then that allowed me to then do some additional coaching on a Sunday. So that obviously had some benefits professionally. And then when I sort of came home, I'd just sort of broken the habit of Saturday night means go out. And then I think once I'd broken the habit of just sort of, it's just a thing that you do on a Saturday night, it just sort of then became normal. And I didn't sort of feel I think before I'd really struggled to sort of go on a night out and not drink. But now you just sort of, I either don't really go out, or I mean, I don't go out and drink, but I'll still go out, but I just don't feel like I'm much better now at socializing without having to have had several beers. Don't get me wrong, still enjoy beers, as you know, when we go out, but I don't feel the sort of need to. And I think you've always got to, like with anything, you've got to train yourself, I think, to sort of like, you can't rely on that spontaneity of having had a few beers and then, you know, whatever that leads to you saying or doing. And potentially at the start, you've got to really think about, right, what am I going to say now? Because everyone else has had 4 beers and I haven't had any beers. So like anything, I think it's definitely something you've sort of got to train yourself to do. And in terms of like what people think, yeah, at the start you take a fair amount of slack off people, but you just sort of, you know, you just laugh it off. You just say, well, I don't want to. I've always been. I don't see the point in having a beer after football on a Sunday. Like if I'm going to a wedding or something, you'll have several beers, you know, whatever, and that's a full evening. But in terms of playing football, having a beer, and then driving home, and then that's it for the day. Again, maybe it's that sort of the empty calories mindset still in there from when I was a bit more strict. Of, well, what's the point in having one beer when you could go home and have 2 Yorkshire puddings instead with your Sunday dinner? And it's sort of like alcohol versus food. Food wins for me in that regard, yeah.
But then you got all that stick, and obviously I've seen it in action. I've seen it with you, and I've seen it with me, and I've seen it with all other people that have made decisions that aren't always booze, but you get stick for doing something that's kind of like against the tribe, if you will. But after a bit, people just get bored of that, and they kind of get used to it, and then all of a sudden it's just Josh just drinks coffee. That's what happens,
and
right?
then it's more of like, oh, you're having a beer?
Yeah.
You know, and it goes more the other way, like, oh, a special occasion. It's like, but then, I don't know, that can then have a different effect on you, because then you're just sort of like, oh, I won't then. So I think now we've almost like gone full circle twice, and then if you do have a beer, everyone's like, oh, I don't want to scare him off, just let him have his beer, and then maybe he'll have another one, like, and that creates a different sort of.
Yeah, I think people are more bothered about kind of like themselves, like you said, being in a social situation and not feeling comfortable being in a pub. Like I spoke to a client recently, they were like, I can't go to the pub and not have an alcoholic drink. I was like, that's a pretty like strange mindset to have. Do you know what I mean? But, you know, I think a lot of people think like that. They associate the pub and social like things with drinking, and they can't seem to have a good time without it until you kind of start being in them environments and realizing, actually, I can still have a good time. And something that you said before was, I got to do something else. So I got to do some more coaching on a Sunday because I stopped drinking. And I think often people think about what stopping drinking stops them from doing rather than what they get to do as a result of it.
Yeah, definitely.
And that looks like you doing some extra coaching on a Sunday, or it looks like having an early morning on a Sunday, not having a hangover, and being able to go out with the kids or go for a walk or go out for the day or do a family day or whatever. And obviously saving the excess money that you're spending on booze and stuff like that as well. And I think that's often what gets missed. It's just like, oh, what do I not get to do? Oh, I don't get to go out and get drunk. But what do I get to do instead? I think is a good question to ask yourself. So to start to sort of tie this all together now, what has been, I suppose, what's been your biggest success yet in terms of, you know, business, fitness is the one thing that stands out to you? You can do both of them things if you want.
Fitness is ongoing because we're in a really good, like at Unit 4 where I train, we have an app where you log everything that, as I mentioned, so you're constantly seeing your progress. So every day within reason is an opportunity to revisit something that you potentially done before, and then it'll tell you when you PR and stuff. So like that's a little bit of, you know, confetti.
Such an American term, by the way.
A PR. Yeah, that's. I think it's an American app, so it always comes like, that's a PR. And you're like, okay, and then like confetti goes off on your phone and stuff. So yeah, there's always that. And then in terms of business wise, I just want to keep doing what we're doing, whilst staying true to the values of what it is that we're doing. So, you know, we're in a position now where we have a soccer school running most half terms, which is amazing. Like when we first started doing those, we weren't sure really if there was going to be a demand for it. So we started off quite tentatively and did, I think it was like 1 or 2 the first year, and now we're up to 5. And then in terms of the weekly sessions, just to just to maintain the numbers of the kids that we're having a positive effect on would be amazing. You know, we're probably seeing, you know, a few hundred kids a week at the weekly sessions across the 4 nights that we have. You know, and to see some players who come in have is a real range of playing experience, no matter what their age is, because we don't prescribe playing experience. It's not an elite environment by any extent. We believe that the coaching is really high standard, but we've had players come in at as young as 7, 6, who obviously you wouldn't expect to have had much playing experience. But then equally, we've had players come in at 9, 10, 11, who, typically speaking, you know, you would expect they've maybe had some contact with football, but maybe they haven't because it doesn't come naturally to the family potentially. And to see, we've had players come around that sort of 9, 10, 11 bracket in particular who haven't had a lot of playing experience and aren't a confident player, aren't a strong player. But then within a year, you know, mum and dad or whoever brings them is saying we found the team where we couldn't even get on a team before because we were told they weren't good enough. So success in the business, I guess, is reflected in sort of the success of the players, really. Like our success is to hopefully continue to grow and to affect as many kids as we can. But then the success is then monitored in, I think, what the players go on to do themselves. So whether that is, I couldn't get on a team before and now I can, I'm on trial at an academy or an ETC for the girls or an RTC. You know, we want our success to be the success of the players, really.
Yeah, and that it's the same as my world, right? As a PT, like ultimately in business, me and you, we live and die on the results that we get for our clients, and that's what it's all about. So you definitely have to make it about that for sure. So have you got plans over the next 12 months, you know, 24 months, 36 months in terms of where you want to be or what you want to do? Is it more of the same?
Yeah, I think really we're at a point now where me and Luke, who do a lot of our coaching at Orange with the team that I mentioned as well, we've just said that if we do any more weekly sessions, if we will launch the Tuesday or start doing a Saturday, we'd probably just have to get an apartment on the docks or something together. We have very understanding wives, supportive families, but there's probably a tipping point for how many nights of the week we can be out coaching. And the soccer schools has sort of allowed us to get into contact with more players, because it's not always players who come to our weekly sessions who come to the soccer schools. So the soccer schools are a really nice opportunity to get to meet new players who potentially the nights that we coach are the nights they're busy, so they can't come to those, but they always come to the soccer schools. So in terms of any further expansion and stuff, I think we're pretty set in what we're doing, and you know, we'll now just strive to make sure that we continue to make, you know, deliver the standards. In terms of what I do at Newman College, that's more like that can be a more sort of results driven exercise in terms of there's matches and there's leagues and there's things to win. Like I said, I've been at Newman 6 or 7 years now, pretty much not long after coming back from the States actually. So did some really enjoyable years with the boys, and then once we launched the girls, that is just sort of, we're really sort of trying to ride the wave of this massive boom in women's football at the minute, where we've gone from, you know, having a squad of probably around 20 players the first year we did it, and now we're probably close to 40 girls for this year. So that's, you know, we're talking that growth in what would be 3 years. But then that allows us to then hopefully have some more results driven stuff where we can now feasibly hopefully aim to try and to win leagues. We're seeing girls go to America on scholarships and stuff, and, you know, go and get experiences that, I mean, they may well get them anyway, but I think we play a big part in helping them get recruited, provide the footage that they need and things like that. So I think we've had 3, maybe 4 go off to America now. We've got the same amount again. So the amount that we've had go to America at this stage, I think there's as many girls in the team currently who are in the process. So by the end of the year, I think we'll double the amount that we've sent off to America on scholarships. So that's again something to measure our success on, because ultimately with college footy, you can't always control the players that you get, because it's whoever comes to the college, and then you obviously have to coach them. But then the other colleges may just have stronger, so you can't always base it on winning, because there might be nothing that you can do. And that's not me copping out on. I'm not, not winning the games, but the things that we can focus on are, we can always monitor and manage the growth of the players, the number of them, and also where they go afterwards. So in terms of the growth of that, that's something that a different challenge, because it's a bit more results driven, I guess, in terms of compared to Orange Soccer.
Yeah, and that relates back to like a theme, I think, that's been in throughout this kind of chat that we've had today, which I think is just whatever it is in any walk of life that we're talking about, you've got a common goal that or you've got a goal that you're working towards. Be that in business, be that in the gym, and that's both short term and long term as well. Obviously, the business, you've got a longer term vision. Short term, you want to help the kids maybe get into a club or get better. Gym, you've got the longer term vision of longevity and sustainability, maybe looking good for a holiday short term, or getting some PBs or PRs in that. So I think that ties together the fact that it's important to have that goal that you're working towards in anything, because I think otherwise people are just kind of like going through the motions, so to speak. And I think that's why a lot of people struggle to get stuck into the gym long term, because they go in with like a bit of a menial, I want to lose a few pounds, and then maybe they do it and that goes away, and then there's nothing that really keeps them there. So one thing that we do is we make sure we focus towards PBs, number of workouts and processes, so that workout means a lot more than just showing up to lose a few pounds for a few weeks and then it disappearing. So actually we're focusing on the processes, which is obviously what you do with your own stuff. So just to tie this off now, this is the Do the Work podcast. So what does the Do the Work mindset mean to you?
I think that to do the work means that you just go and do it anyway. I know you're really good at sort of posting 18 out of, usually it's more than expected, isn't it? It's like 18 out of 16. So you've done more. But I think we sort of touched on it right at the start. Even when exercise or turning up to training or a relationship, whatever it is, even when it's bad, it's still good. So I think you've just got to show up and do it. No one wants to do these things. No one wants to, no one wants to get up for the gym at whatever time. Nobody really wants to be disciplined in what they eat, but the rewards are there. Like, I think with fitness, and then as we've sort of said, like a larger conversation with life, it works. Like, it's proven to work. If you stick to an exercise plan, if you eat good food, if you go to the gym, if you turn up to training, if you practice, you've learned to play the piano, like, if you practice and you do it, it's almost impossible for you not to improve. So it's just knowing that. And I think the biggest thing that sets people back is an unrealistic amount of time. So like, I want to lose a stone in a week. Oh, well, I can't do it. I'm giving up. It's like, well, I want to lose a stone in however long it takes, but then I'll set a new goal. So I think just turn up, do it anyway, would be what do the work means to me.
Love it. Thanks for sharing that. So just before we tie it off, where can people find out more about Orange Soccer?
You can find out about Orange Soccer through our website, which is orangesoccer.co.uk, also on Facebook, also on Instagram. All my contact details are on there as well. So if any potential parents that are listening want to find out a bit more about what we do, be more than happy to chat with them as well.
Amazing. So we'll get all the links added into the bottom of the episode and stuff like that. And then, as I say, if people have got questions, they can get in touch.
Excellent.
All right, Josh, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, mate.
Thanks for tuning in for today's episode. I hope you found it useful. And if you did, you've got the power to share this message as well. So if you have a friend who might find this content useful, please share it with them. And we'll see you on the next episode.